Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. I'm going to be giving a talk on time management for the Mensa conference in a couple of weeks. And in preparation, I thought I'd kill two birds with one stone, do my preparation, and also give you something that you might find of value. So I'm going to just kind of run through what I'm planning to say, and hopefully there'll be some value. First is there's a prerequisite to time management, and that is, do you really care enough? If your life is in the crapper, you don't really care about making the most of your time. So I'm going to start by having them write down what they think is the crap in their life that's going to keep them from caring about time. It could be their career or lack thereof. It could be their relationships or lack thereof. It could be their health, mental or physical. And then for each of the things that they consider a block, something that would make them not even care about time management, I'm going to ask them to just theoretically write down what would be a baby step or two that they would take to try to improve. Now, I'm not certainly expecting that a little activity like that's going to get them to solve their problems, but at least it's important for me to address it because it really is prerequisite to teaching time management, because you've got to care first. But having done that, then I'm going to talk about clarifying priorities, but I think I'm going to try to do it in a little bit of a less cliched way. I'm going to start by telling a story. I was a medical researcher at Rockefeller University, working on the first research that proved that blood pressure could be lowered through biofeedback. And it was very prestigious. Rockefeller is a very prestigious place. But I was moved by the civil rights movement and quit, much to my mother's dismay, to become a drug counselor in the inner city. And then I went and got a PhD, in which my dissertation was on evaluating reading programs for African Americans. And then after that, although my dissertation from Berkeley was nominated for Dissertation of the Year, I ended up feeling I wanted to still work in the inner city, so I went to Richmond, California. It was a very tough school, very tough area, and gave every bit of myself to them. I convinced the Bally Corporation to donate a arcade Pac-Man machine for us to use as a reinforcer. I convinced the Richmond Police Department to donate a bunch of bicycles that they had claimed that were stolen, that were returned. They were somehow sent to the police department. We took them apart, put them together, and wrote a manual on fixing bikes, and then sold them and kept some of the profit and gave some to charity. I rewrote The Wizard of Oz, Sound of Music, and Oliver, and we did 45-minute length plays that we did as assemblies. I took them home with me to wanting to let them experience what middle-class life was like, but because they couldn't all fit in my house, some of them stayed with me and some of them stayed with my classroom aide. The next morning, my classroom aide tells me that a group of them gang raped her. That was a shock to me. It convinced me that I always had some gnawing feeling that wasn't what I was meant to do and wasn't the best use of my time given my limitations and strengths. Their reading scores, I was considered a very good teacher. They gave me the same group of kids for 3 years as kind of an experiment, but the reading scores didn't go up that much. And I'd always felt that they were who they were, but then this rape thing just put me over the edge, and I decided that the best use of my time, my priority, would be to work with people who have a smaller constellation of problems, and that's why since then I've worked with 5,500 career counseling clients, mostly middle class and wealthy and successful, but who still have problems, and I feel it was a wise choice. I've made a much bigger difference. But that's me. That's just my anomalous situation. So my point is, that's how I'm going to kick off the little exercise that I'm going to have them do. I'm going to have them create a pie chart, and I'm going to want to ask them to divide the pie chart according to their priorities. Career, and if so, what kind of career? Family, what kind of involvement they want in the family. Non-family work activities that could be an avocation, like being involved in community theater or volunteering to help poor or low-income people or whatever. But dividing that up into a pie chart with a little bit of specificity in each of the categories, and divide it up according to their ratio. Some people like a balance. Other people are quite extreme and very happy working, for example, 90 hours or 70 or 80 hours a week. There's no one size fits all, but concretizing it in a pie chart, I hope, will help. Then I'm going to turn from that macro perspective to tactics. The most important tactic, and it is a little bit macro, is I believe it's very important for everybody to have a little voice in their ear that is consciously asking themselves, should I do this task? Should I do it now? Or is it fine to take a break? Fine to play a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you are going to do it, thinking of how well you want to do it. Some things need to be done perfectionistically. Other things can be done slipshod. So I think of it as a gas pedal. You don't want you're not pedal to the metal all the time, nor do you want to just have your feet tapping lightly on the gas all the time. It's going to vary with the situation. So I'm going to encourage my attendees to think of that as have that little voice saying, okay, should I be doing this? Should I be doing it now? And if so, how far on the gas pedal of perfectionism should I push? I'm also going to want to talk, again, now we're getting much more tactical and less strategic. People spend an enormous amount of time on meal preparation when in fact they could save a ton of time and a ton of money. It's very possible to create very healthy and good tasting meals in a remarkably little amount of time. And I'll give just one day's worth of examples. For breakfast, on a warm day, you could have frozen yogurt with some mixed fruit in it. Not frozen yogurt, regular yogurt where you stir in, whether it be canned peaches if fresh fruit is out of season, or bananas or whatever. Or if it's cold, just oatmeal you stick in the microwave for a minute. And I have a bag that mixes 3 items that I get from Trader Joe's: shredded coconut, dried cranberries, and walnuts. I mix them all. It's all mixed together in one big bag. I just take a handful of that, throw it in the oatmeal, and I've got a very, very delicious breakfast. Lunch can be either a sandwich or a salad with fruit for dessert. And dinner could be, for example, a piece of broiled meat or fish seasoned to taste, along with vegetables seasoned, whether curry or garlic or whatever. And dessert could be fresh fruit or something like that. So you could see a relatively inexpensive day's eating, very healthy, tasty. Of course, you're going to vary. You're going to adapt it to your tastes. And minimal time, very little shopping and chopping, and no 10-item recipes, 10 item sets of instructions. So that's a kind of way in which you can think about being time effective. Other examples, of course, and perhaps less controversial, is telecommuting. By design, government is building fewer and fewer freeways. They want us out of our cars for ostensible environmental reasons, so the commutes are getting ever longer. Mass transit is still ever longer still. And so getting to telecommute for a day or 2 a week, even if it's not normally done at your workplace, could save you a tremendous amount of time here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I have many clients who spend 2 hours a day sitting in stressful commute traffic. And I've convinced many of them to ask their boss to allow them to telecommute, at least on a trial basis, and it usually works out just fine. And it's convincing to the employer because they're getting a fresher employee, somebody who's not drained from an hour-long stressed commute just to begin with. And frankly, there are people who spend more than an hour each way on that commute. Next tactic that I will share is having a sponge activity. I'll speak personally. I always have an activity to do when I have these dead times. So I hike with my dog every day, and I take a memo pad with me, or on my phone I listen to an audiobook. When I'm in my car, I don't always do it, but I usually listen to an audiobook, especially one that's going to help me with my career, because I care a lot about keeping learning. Even though I'm not a kid anymore, I want to keep learning, and so I'm always listening to audiobooks. It also distracts me from the terrible traffic. In terms of learning, it's another example of time effectiveness, which is I'm a big fan of just-in-time learning. The course, let alone a degree, is really a very inefficient way to learn, because you're learning what this professor wants you to learn. You may not need to know all of it, and he or she is proceeding at the pace that professor wants, not what you need. I'm a huge fan of just-in-time learning on your own with help of a tutor. Can be invaluable and a very time-effective way to do your learning. Also, if you're not going to do that, at least there these quick online practical courses taught through your professional association or on Udemy or Udacity or a university extension, either online or in person or a hybrid, can be a very effective way to get the skills you need when you need it and you're motivated, and without the massive amount of learning in a degree program, most of which you'll either not remember by the time you need it or it'll be obsolete. Next, I want to talk about breaks. They say that sitting is the new smoking, and indeed all of us should be getting out of our desks, out of our seats for a few minutes every hour, and that's good not just for health, but it's just a little part of work-life balance, but it's not wasting a lot of time. After a few minutes, normally the benefit begins to wane relative to the cost, what you otherwise could be doing with the time. That term of opportunity cost, something I use all the time. If I'm doing this task or taking this break, what am I not doing, and is it more valuable? It's another part of the little voice in my head. What's the opportunity cost of my going to my second cousin's third wedding in Topeka? What is the opportunity cost of taking a 30-minute break? What is the opportunity cost of my doing meditation or yoga? I'm not going to give people the answers to that. I'm just going to ask people to be very vigilant, conscious. Vigilance too strong. Conscious of what they're doing. And then I want to talk about mini vacations. I believe that the 8-day, 7-day vacation, let alone the 2-week vacation, is more for travel packages benefit than for people. Most people find you get a maximum benefit of restorativeness and fun in most situations, taking 14 one-day vacations than 2 week-long vacations. If only because preparing for that week-long vacation, you've got a lot of preparation to do to get your workplace ready, to get babysitters and house sitters, and there's a lot. And then when you come back, there's usually a pile of work. Where the one day you're getting whether it be a staycation or a day trip, you're getting a lot of benefit for minimum hassle, and you're getting 14 of those during the year instead of 2-week vacation in big chunks. And so those are the time tactics. Then I'm going to turn in the next section of my talk to talk about remediation. Those are tactics that anybody could use, but what if you are one of the many people who's simply not aware of time? You wonder where the hour went, where the day went, where your life went. So sometimes it's helpful to do this little activity where you have a little timer like this, one of these some kind of kitchen timer or whatever, and you simply set it for 30 seconds. And you start talking, maybe talk about your favorite activity. And it's amazing how quick 30 seconds goes. That's not only a pretty good way to keep aware of your time, but it also keeps you from being long-winded in conversations. Speaking of which, that's another important little tactic. In a two-way conversation, it's usually best, as a rule of thumb, there's no rules, but rule of thumb, to be talking 30 to 50% of the time, and to keep your utterances to an average of 30 seconds, maybe between 10 and 60 seconds. But during the first 30 seconds, your light's green, they're not thinking you're a blowhard. Second 30, it's yellow. They're increasing chance they wish you'll shut up. And at 60-second mark, you probably should shut up or ask a question. What else? It's just, this big awareness, getting aware of time. That's also procrastinators. They're not aware sometimes they're even procrastinating. You've got to stay aware of when you're about to procrastinate. You've also, to cure procrastination, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's natural human nature, and it's not just human nature, but parameciums. When you poke them, they move away. There's a natural tendency to avoid the uncomfortable. But even if you have an ostensibly cool career, you've got to accept that a lot of the time, it's not going to be fun. There are very few people who spend their time jumping up out of bed every morning, notwithstanding the guests on Oprah. So you've got to accept foundationally that work has tremendous value in and of itself, even if it's not fun. That responsibility factor is really pretty important, because when you die, you could have spent your whole day, your whole life having fun, watching Netflix, having sex, eating, staring at nature, whatever. But obviously you would have accomplished a lot less than somebody who, without exhausting themselves, spent a lot of time being productive. And that being productive requires being uncomfortable a lot of the time. not in terrible pain, but right now, for example, I'm not having fun doing this. I'm thinking, I'm working hard to try to be of value to you. But I accept that level of uncomfortability because I believe it's a good use of my time. I believe I'm benefiting hopefully you who are watching this. And yet it's not something that's going to take me a huge amount of time. I'm only making one take of this. I'm not going to make 3 takes. Even though it's not polished, I make a judgment that it's time effective for me to just ad-lib and talk to you about what I would say, rather than spending hours and hours polishing it and creating some perfect video. Next, regarding procrastination, let's say already you're willing to accept that you're willing to be uncomfortable part of the time. And as I said, you're also going to be very aware of when you're tempted to procrastinate. At that point, yes, you got to evaluate. Say, okay, do I want to procrastinate? Because there's a time you want to take a lunch break or whatever. But if you think that the pros and cons, the advantages of doing the task now are worth it, think of the long-term benefits, the short-term benefits. Clearly, it'll be more fun to go out and get a burrito. But really evaluate whether you should be doing the task. And if you decide you should, but you're still reluctant, very often my clients have been helped and I'm helped, especially if it's a daunting task, to ask myself, what's my next 1 second task? And that gets me started. And then I'll do another one. I'll say, okay, what's my next 1 second task? And sometimes just 2 or 3 of those 1 second tasks enough to get me rolling, like an object at rest tends to stay at rest, object in motion tends to stay in motion. I also do the same thing when I reach a roadblock. I take a deep breath, maybe I'll stand up and stretch, and then I'll say, okay, let me not get overwhelmed here. Do I know what my next baby step to solving this roadblock is? And if not, I might say, okay, let me see if let me make a phone call, email somebody and get help and come back to this part later. I think, those are the main content areas. And then I'm simply going to ask them if they want to commit to 1 or 2 actual things they want to try in their real life to help improve their time management. And that's my plan. So, lest I be guilty of talking too much, this was 17 minutes and 17 seconds. I thank you for watching. I'm going to ask you, is there one thing or 2 things you might want to try that you learned from this little mini lecture? In any case, I do thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko.